So there's a pretty massive beef going on with former intellectual dark web members. If you don't remember the intellectual dark web, they came out in 2018. It was people, there's a specific lineup in there, by the way. Go read the New York Times article. The people who are included in that's the intellectual dark web. Sam Harris, Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, the Weinstein brothers, some other people in there as well. That was supposed to be like the lineup, right? These are the guys who are really talking about the real issues, right? They're not the mainstream, they're the dark web. So there has been some beef going on between them now. Joe Rogan and Dave Rubin aren't on speaking terms anymore. It looks like Joe Rogan has completely abandoned Dave Rubin under the suspicion that he's a grifter. But it also appears that Bret Weinstein has gone full anti-vax, cringy conspiracy theorist, lunatic moron. Which I have to say, I'm definitely very surprised that he went down that rabbit hole. I did not expect him to go down that rabbit hole. Very surprising to go that insane, that much like, questioning the vaccine. Vaccine has extremely, incredibly high efficacy. You can see the death rates of coronavirus, like 99% of people dying of COVID are unvaccinated. If you get the vaccine, your odds of dying of COVID are virtually zero, pretty close to zero. So that's just the kind of situation that we're in. Those are the facts. But Sam Harris is somebody who is very, very pro-vaccine. And so he's found himself in a position where he has disagreed with Bret Weinstein very, very heavily. Now, Sam Harris had turned in his intellectual dark web membership card. And so he's done with them. He was somebody who was insanely critical of Donald Trump. He hated Donald Trump. Joe Rogan was very sympathetic towards Donald Trump pretty much the whole way. And then he supported him over Joe Biden in 2020. And pretty much all of the other people, either they didn't criticize Trump or they just outright supported him. So Sam Harris was already kind of not down with that stuff. And he was down with Donald Trump being banned off of Twitter, these kinds of things. So he finds himself in this weird position where the rest of the intellectual dark web are faking. They're doing that fake, faux liberal bullshit, but in reality, they're just conservatives who are Trump supporters who are going under this kind of false cloaking. Whereas he was more like, more outwardly liberal in that sense of being anti-Trump and whatnot. So it puts him in a weird position. Now, here what you're going to see is Joe Rogan is going to talk about the Bret Weinstein and Sam Harris divide. Sam Harris does not want to platform Bret Weinstein because he doesn't want to spread any of the BS that Bret Weinstein is going to push. Joe Rogan, obviously, is also a pretty big anti-vaxxer and a moron. So I want you to go ahead and check this video out.
My friend Sam Harris, who I love dearly, I think he's a brilliant person, and then Bret Weinstein, I love him dearly. I think he's a brilliant person. They disagree vehemently, but they don't talk.
That's too bad.
Weinstein wants to talk, and Sam doesn't want to have him on because Sam essentially thinks he's almost like a flat earther now. And I was trying to figure out how to work this out, and I'm like, okay, let me just figure out what the approach is. And I don't think I could even get them together in a room. Like, Sam doesn't want to have Bret on his podcast, and so I'm like, okay, could I have the two of them on mine? Like, surely
that's too bad.
there's
What
got
does
to be
Sam
common
say?
ground.
Why does Sam doesn't want? I mean, it's strange to me that he wouldn't want to.
I don't know.
I mean, because there's like, look,
I don't want to put words in his mouth.
Yeah,
I don't. But his position is that Bret is wildly incorrect about the efficacy of the vaccines, the dangers of the vaccines, and the effectiveness of them, and also that he's incorrect about how vaccines will select for more aggressive variants when the vaccines allow transmission, right? So being a leaky vaccine, this is the controversy. As one of the controversies that I got involved with too, because I tweeted a paper from 2015 that was specifically about how leaky vaccines, meaning vaccines that also allow transmission, like vaccines that don't necessarily 100% protect you from transmission, can select for more aggressive variants. So if there's one protein like in this vaccine that protects you from COVID, but then there are other variants that are not protected in that same way, having a mass population vaccinated will select for these variants. And Sam's position was that first of all, this variant came from India, where there's way less people that are vaccinated. But I don't think Bret's position is that it's creating these variants, but it's that having people vaccinated for that variant selects for more aggressive variants. I'm too dumb to understand who's right. Right? And I hear this conversation going back and forth, and I'm like, are there going to be mutations no matter what? And apparently everybody says there is. Like if you have like a bunch of people infected by a disease, even if there's no vaccine, you're going to have variants. You're going to have mutations. Viruses change and adapt, and you know. So it's fucking complicated shit, but it's Bret's wheelhouse. I mean, he is an evolutionary biologist. This is what he studies. So it's when he discusses it, he's not discussing it from a position where he's guessing. And then, I think the two of them probably could come to some understanding if they got together in a room and talked it through, but this is a part of the hysteria of the times that people don't want to be associated with people that they think have questionable ideas or that are promoting questionable ideas. And there's a panic that's attached to this pandemic that is testing people's resolve and their intellectual fortitude in a way that I don't think I've ever seen anything like it in my life.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because you say he considers it a flat Earth theory. Well, why would you not want to debate somebody that has a flat Earth theory? It should be pretty easy for you.
Maybe
to
it's
win
also
that
that's
argument.
not. I mean, he's a neuroscientist. Maybe it's not his wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Maybe he thinks that someone else should do it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's just, to me, it's crazy.
Yeah, so you guys there just saw what Joe Rogan said about the situation. I'm personally surprised that Joe Rogan still respects Sam Harris. That's something I'm really surprised about because I didn't think that Joe Rogan would be down with someone who has the kind of ideology he has. Again, let me repeat, he was very critical of Donald Trump, very open about his criticism of Donald Trump. He's very, very pro-vaccine. Joe Rogan is obviously a COVID denier on multiple fronts. So I thought that he would have abandoned him at that point. Bret Weinstein is obviously more in his camp. Now, I did listen to part of Sam Harris's AMA where he talks about why he won't have Bret Weinstein on his podcast for a debate. And it's kind of hard to listen to Sam Harris, honestly. He's pretty boring and he talks extremely, extremely slow. But, what he was basically saying is he was explaining how these kinds of debates can be really, really misleading and people are very shady in this nature. And in the video, they talk about how, why not debate a flat earther? It's so easy. You think that, but in reality, it's not easy because these people spend an insane amount of time on a bunch of random stuff, random websites, all of these different kinds of conspiracies, random video footage, blah, blah, blah. And unless you're a specific expert in that field, like if you're an expert on physical science or, I don't know, like astronomy or whatever, so whatever would be most pertinent to something like flat Earth, where that all the ins and outs and everything about that subject, it's going to be difficult. You will spend hours upon hours because they'll keep sending these random sources with whether it's a gish gallop of just a bunch of bullshit that you have to spend like 12 hours debunking. It's actually really difficult with these conspiracy theorists. So Sam Harris was essentially explaining that, he might say something about some unconfirmed, non-peer-reviewed study or something like that will confirm the bias of the viewers who are in there, and he would have to go through specifically to look at said study or look at this, but he can't do that in real time because it's simply too difficult to do in real time. He would need time to look over the studies. And Sam Harris neither Sam Harris or Bret Weinstein are experts in virology, obviously. I mean, Bret Weinstein, I guess, evolutionary biologist. He's not a virologist. And Sam Harris is a neuroscientist. But obviously what Sam Harris is doing is he's deferring to the experts on the subject, right? Whereas Bret Weinstein is... I don't know if people are trying to do like the appeal to authority stuff on his front. I've definitely seen some people doing that kind of thing. Interesting to see the people who probably defended Sam Harris against Reza Aslan and for the whole, I have these degrees thing, and now it's that he's the evolutionary biologist, blah, whatever. But I see where Sam Harris is coming from, and I think that that makes the most sense. Once someone is insanely TFG, it's really hard to pull them out of that hole, but also because engaging them is so difficult, because it's so easy to press bullshit, just garbage that takes a long time to debunk, it can make it very, very difficult to thoroughly go through everything that they're saying. It makes it really, really hard. It's way harder to do the debunking than just putting some shit forward that takes a lot of time to debunk. And considering he's not, like, Sam Harris isn't a virology expert, it makes sense why he wouldn't want to do that. And so it is a waste of time to engage flat earthers unless you are somebody who knows literally everything to know about, the roundness of the earth and just all of the science behind that. I've seen tons of videos of people explaining, like, well, there's one video where it was like explaining how we know that the earth is not flat without any sort of direct science or anything like that. It's just the way that planes fly and things of that nature. So if you're an expert in that area, it can make sense. But if you're not, you can get bogged down by bullshit very easily because you don't know all the ins and outs of everything. And so that shady strategy of just saying bullshit ends up working. So I understand what it is that Sam Harris is saying. Weinstein's obviously, he's a massive clown. And it's really sad to see just how much he's sold out and gone in that crazy, batshit insane hole, I guess. I can't believe he went that far, but I guess Sam Harris is the only one who's even remotely sane out of the entire intellectual dark web. I would definitely say that Sam Harris has been easily the most sane out of all of them. Of course, Joe Rogan is a complete moron and a lunatic as well, but I'm surprised Joe Rogan hasn't canceled Sam Harris. That's surprising to me. I have to say, definitely surprised by that myself. So, interesting stuff going on with some beef going on the intellectual dark web.